considered a rational thought.
Oh, I love that opening of our show. Rational thoughts that we have. We have plenty of those today. Got a great guest on today. He's got a book coming out. It's very, very interesting. He's an entrepreneur, like a lot of us, business advisor, he's author. He's dedicated to helping business owners unlock their real potential. He's got great work ethic, natural leadership abilities. He's got a BS in engineering, not a BS, but a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. So he's great at analytical thinking and problem solving, which, a lot of people in the advisory space are very right brain and salesy. Steve is not. Steve is like, here's how things work. So I want to share with you his wisdom today on our show. Welcome, Mr. Steve Duke. Steve, how are you today?
I'm fine, Doug. Glad to be here.
Okay, cool. So we talked briefly before the show started about, what you do and the problems out there with, oh my gosh, the one of our books was called The $78 Trillion Tsunami. All these baby boomers retiring, and the business owners are like, how do I sell my business? And you mentioned that before the show started, you were just talking with somebody who had a $50 million business very recently, and now it's zero. And he's like, how can you? Wow, that's an amazing. The point is, we're going to talk today about people who may want to transition, exit, or at least keep their value, and the traps and problems they're facing that they don't know about. That's what I want to cover. We all know we need to adapt to changes in AI, but there's a bunch of hidden things I think you're going to share with us, if I'm not mistaken, on how to make sure that you can keep your growth or at least have a healthy exit, right? So before we do that, I want to hear about your background as an engineer, how you got on from engineering and transitioned into consulting.
Well, it was, I guess I probably didn't follow my own advice. My life probably was incidental as opposed to intentional. But nonetheless, I grew up in a humble background. I grew up on a family farm, which caused me to develop a fairly significant work ethic. So much so that when I got into the corporate world, people thought I was a bit strange because there was still work to be done and I was still working and everyone else was leaving. But in any event, I got into engineering. The activity when I was growing up was fairly mechanical, so I got into mechanical engineering. I got a BS and then an MS. And actually, about 20 years later, I got an MBA.
Wow.
And started in engineering, and I was one of those unique engineers that could frequently string a couple sentences together. So I eventually got into leadership positions and worked my way up the food chain. Went through business development, program management, project management, and I was a GM of a fairly significant business unit for a time being as well.
Okay. And how did you get in the consulting space after all the engineering and leadership experience? What was the pivotal point there to take you into that?
Well, that truly was accidental.
That's okay. I'm here as an accident too. I think a lot of us are.
When I left the corporate world, I started in a marketing related business. And sold it as a result of a health issue. And the guy that sold it, he was in the community. I knew him, so one day I was just networking, and I went to talk to him to have a cup of coffee, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to do this?" So I said, "Well, okay. I know a little bit about business and businesses, so it seems like a decent fit." So I got started there.
Just over coffee, just made a big pivot, just like that, huh?
Just like that.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, I got into it by accident too. I was spent 20 years in the real estate investment, development, and training industry, and in 2008, that all went away. So during my little boohoo phase, as everything was crashing, I wrote a book, and the book was awful. But I wanted to make it better, so I learned about publishing. That's how I got into this industry. So it's, small little movements can set us on completely different paths. It's a lot of fun.
Yep.
So let's talk about the business owners out there who are, maybe have a little gray like me, or are growing their companies, and you're seeing the big picture here based on what you said earlier. What are some of the key things that people should be looking out for in terms of getting a business preparing for growth or exit?
Well, you referenced this gentleman that I just spoke to,
Yeah.
the guy that had the $50 million business, and the conversation I just had with him. And you know this, or most people know this, but we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes.
That's right. Yeah.
So this particular gentleman is a lot more astute and insightful today than he was, 5 years ago when he started this business.
Right.
So,
You started 5 years ago?
yeah, maybe 8, but
Whatever. To get to 50 million in less than 10 years, he's working.
he was really good at sales. Which, by the way, is one of the problems in that some businesses can face, because they go gangbusters selling stuff, and they sell themselves out of a business.
Wow.
Because you get so much business you can't fulfill it, or your customer service, ends up being a mess, and you lose your reputation. So,
Wow.
that's one thing business owners need to pay attention to. They're better off paying attention to their bottom line as opposed to their top line.
What in your world is it the top line? Bottom line, I guess, is profit, but
Yeah.
revenue?
Revenue. Yeah.
Revenue. Okay.
So obviously revenue is important, but don't go crazy if you're going to run out of cash.
Yeah, I was talking to someone earlier today who has a nice little $30-40 million company, and he was tracking really well before COVID with double digit on his EBITDA. It was very solid, and after COVID, it's down to single digits. It's like his volume is still kind of there, but the margins are really tight. It's accrual looks great, but cash flow not so wonderful.
I've got a friend that had a pretty substantial business, just same as this guy that I was referencing, going gangbusters, selling.
Yeah.
And he ran the company out of cash and out of business.
Wow. So okay, so paying attention to the bottom line sounds kind of obvious to me, but I guess as some people growing, they're focusing on that top line stuff and not paying attention to margins, huh?
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say if I got a message for business owners, I don't know if the Boy Scouts are in vogue today or not, but always be prepared.
Yeah.
Because 50% of exits are unplanned.
Wow, 50%.
50%. So life happens, and you need to be prepared for it at all times.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so being prepared, pay attention to bottom line before top line, or at least in concert with it. What else? Is this a good time to show you a graphic, or?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at Steve's website earlier, and it's got a beautiful graphic that really demonstrates, what he's talking about here. So we'll just bring that up on the screen, and people can see it here in a second. But yeah, we talk about the business life cycle, and this is the fun part for entrepreneurs. Yeah, we're growing, and yeah, a lot of them go out of business in 5 years or 10 years. But this is the part where they don't know what's going on, right? I'm looking at the squiggly lines there.
Yeah, and most people are familiar with the statistics, as you just said. Most businesses fail within 10 years.
Yeah.
Only a few percentages of businesses make it over $1 million in revenue. So, I mean, that's data to suggest that they could use some advice.
Right.
But I'm a little bit unique. I work with some early stage businesses at a local incubator, as well as more mature business to help them grow, exit planning, and exit. So I understand what happens at the far end of the business life cycle, which suggests what people should have done, business owners should have done earlier to avoid the pitfalls.
Well, that's what we want to cover today, Stephen. We got about 10 minutes here. I want to find out, other than looking at bottom line, give me, I don't know how many got 3, 4, 5 different tips they can do so they don't get caught with the majority of people here?
Well, probably number one is you want to avoid what I call owner centricity.
Mm-hmm.
If you, the owner, are the business,
Yeah.
what's the acquirer buying when you leave, when you close the door and leave?
Yeah.
So, and you know the stats, about 80% of businesses that go to market don't sell. So that's one of the reasons. You need to have good financials. A lot of small business owners or
Yeah.
small to medium-sized business owners think it's good to put stuff in the expense category to minimize their taxes, but
Yeah.
that's not good. You know, simplistically speaking, business is valued based upon multiple times the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're tucking away $1 in the expensive category that doesn't belong there, then you're losing, say, if your multiple's 3, you're losing $3 when you go to sell.
Yeah, I think it's very common in the sub-$1 million level where people are living their life through their business. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, this is a real business. You've got, staff, employees, maybe some compliance things. You gotta be straight and narrow on that stuff. You can't be taking the mom and pop mentality into your, $2 or $3 million enterprise. It's probably a bad idea.
Right. So you need to have a good, solid management staff, senior staff.
Yeah.
Um, I have a phrase. You also don't want to have a hostage situation.
Hostage?
Yeah, and by that I mean if you've got key employees, you want to make sure that they're tied to the company somehow, maybe with an incentive program or something like that. If you've got a key 1 or 2 key suppliers and your company's going to crumble, you want to have flexibility in your suppliers. And probably the biggest is you don't want to have more than 10 or 15% of your revenue coming from any single particular client.
Yes. Speaking of engineering, my best friend from high school is a mechanical engineer, and he worked for a company that made winches for ships.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Oh, that's a big thing, gears and whatnot." Who are some of your clients? He says, "Oh, we only have one client, the U.S. Navy." I'm like, "Oh, that's a good for a few years," but all of a sudden they got somebody go there and undercut them. It's like they wipe out the whole company. So yeah, it's
Exactly right.
very dangerous. Yeah. Okay. So have multiple. Yeah. No hostage to any vendors. No hostage to customers or employees. That makes sense. What else?
Well, of course, one of the fundamentals is to have a differentiated market position.
Yeah. Right.
Acquirers buy what they can't create themselves. So if you've got something unique, then that's attractive as a acquisition candidate.
Wow. Yeah. That is.
Other one is the market size. If you're a little niche place and there's no upside, then you're not too interested. But if you're in a large, I'll use a technical term, ginormous market.
That's right.
Then you're going to be more attractive because there's more upside for an acquirer.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
I know obviously, and this might be obvious to everybody, but people who have an enterprise level company, you've got to have independent audits, you've got to have SOPs, all those things to make it purchasable. What about the guy who's got a lawn care company or a flower shop? He's a small business. Some of the things he can do, some things he can't do. It's sort of hard to differentiate if you own a landscaping company. I'm guessing. I don't know. Is there things a little guy can do to play with the big boys and position himself for a possible exit like that?
Well, actually, the same principles apply to the little guy. I mean, if it's a one individual show, then it is what it is. But even small businesses less than $1 million, they can have a senior staff and they can have documented processes, and good financials, and, a multitude of clients. So the same principles apply.
Okay. What's some? Give me a story. I've always loved stories, as you know. Give me a story of one of your most maybe you've read or done it with somebody who's like, wow, that was a really good thing that happened here to help you grow your company or exit it.
Well, unfortunately, there's more unpleasant stories than there are.
Let's start with the unpleasant one. That's we need something to avoid. That's fine. We'll do one of those.
Well, I mean, I guess about a year ago, I had a manufacturing business. It was about $4 million revenue, decent sized business. But this individual failed to get my advice beforehand. So he had a great deal of, well, the business was owner centric. So he could have sold it, but probably 10 times less than what he wanted for it because of the owner centricity.
Yeah.
So
he ended up selling it?
Actually, he did not.
Right.
So, I mean, and so he's one of the 80% that go to market that don't sell.
Wow. And let's take his as an example. Obviously, no names here, but he's doing a $4 million a year manufacturing. What kind of multiple would a manufacturing business get nowadays?
I mean, if it had good characteristics, it could be in the 5 or 6 range.
Okay. So let's say it's 5. That's easy math. So he could have had a $20 million exit from his company had he replaced himself early on, right? The owner's the first one you got to replace, or want to bring in someone to run it, right?
Yep. And ideally, you document all your senior staff, and you get backups for all your senior staff. Minimize failure points.
Right.
Acquisitions are all about risk.
Yeah. How do you back up senior staff? Just have someone else in the wings? I mean, what does that mean, back them up?
Yeah, someone in training.
Wow. Okay.
It doesn't have to be ironclad, but
right.
At least a notional plan of, okay, we've got someone in training, someone that's working closely. They could pick it up if this other person gets hit by a bus or leaves or retires or whatever.
Sure.
So it's all about thinking ahead and
yeah, I like that. So, for example, just use this guy's example. Obviously, again, no names, but if a $4 million manufacturing company, how many people would be considered senior management they'd have to be looking at? Forget the shop workers. What about the senior? How many people?
It doesn't have to be. We're not talking dozens of people here. 3 or 4 key people can run that business like that.
Right. Okay, so you just have some managers in the wings working something. So yeah, he could be promoted if Joe leaves. Bring up Mitch, type of thing. Huh? That's
exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. This is why I cross-train all my employees, by the way. I want to make sure they can do everything. Yeah, that's really good. Nice. Okay.
That's a good approach.
All right. So do you have any success stories? I know that you got more 80% failures in the world, not from you, but from people not exiting. Any success stories? Somebody who they did it right. Can't be all doom and gloom here.
Well, I haven't had an I guess an accidental success.
No, not in you, but something you've read or worked on during your, tenure as a business person. You've seen things and talked to people. It doesn't have to be your client.
Well, there was an example. I didn't do it, but I had a related business like this to sell that. I talked about owner or customer concentration.
Mm-hmm.
This particular client did have one customer, but it took 3 years, but the business was eventually sold. So you can't say there's a buyer for everything, but sometimes if you're tenacious enough, then you get.
One of my clients had one client, but it was Louis Vuitton. So he was in only one division of this multi-billion-dollar company, and he was doing very well for a number of years. And you could actually go to other divisions in that company and do your same thing and just, spread yourself out a little bit.
Right.
He was a small operator, it was like less than 5 employees, so it was okay for him for now. And last time I spoke with him, he's got other clients now. He's not just focusing on the big one. But it's really good advice to I like the hostage reference there, Steve. It makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. What
is one piece of advice you'd give a person who is in the thought process. They've got time. You know, their business is established. It's over $1 million. What's one piece of advice you give them to make sure they don't screw it up in the time to exit in 2 or 3 years?
Well, whether it's see me or see someone like me, an exit planner,
Right.
an assessment and find out what your situation actually is.
Yeah, that is very clear advice. I love that. Yeah. And the reason is, I'm going to just say it, but you can reiterate or, add to it. Entrepreneurs, they see what they see, and it's all rose colored, happy stuff, but they don't see the ecosystem that you see. How, capital has changed and the market's changed. They might not be, they're so busy in a business, they don't see, who the potential buyers could even be, maybe.
Yeah, I wish I could get more business owners to realize that planning is not implementation. So when they hear the words exit planning, that doesn't mean you have to exit. You're just
plan for it. That is let's end on that. Yeah, that's great. Say that again. I love the way you said that.
Planning is not implementation. So
that's right. You can plan for an exit, but you don't have to take it. Just get it ready to go. So one of our clients said that he has the same space in M&A, and he says, like, I think 30% of his calls are people who get unsolicited offers, and they don't know what they're doing. They start to talk, and he's like, don't talk, right? Because they'll say something. Oh, that sounds like to give an LOI for X. Oh, that sounds pretty good. Send it over. I'm like, oh. And he had to unwind a couple of them. And when he did, he's like, I got like you. He's like, oh no, I helped a guy make an extra $3-4 million just in negotiation alone. So yeah,
a little slow. Do you have time for another anecdote?
Yeah.
Okay, so the success story.
Yeah, good.
I know this. I didn't cause this to happen, but I know a business owner. He's actually an author now, by the way, but among other things, but as well as a business owner. But he was running a failing business, working 80 to 100 hours a week. The business was absolutely failing. I guess he had a vision, and he systematized his business. Not overnight. It doesn't happen overnight, but he did. So he's gone from, let's say, 80 hours a week, a failing business. Now he's got a successful business, and he works in the business 1 hour a month, and it's very profitable.
Whoa. That's a system I'd like to see. 80 hours a week to 1 hour a month?
Yes, sir.
You want to interview him for your next book, Steve. That would be a really good expose to show people if he's open to sharing how he did that. That's very impressive.
He probably would be. So good suggestion.
Yeah. Keep that one in mind. Steve, so thank you so much for being on the show today. Folks, if you want to get more information about this stuff, what I highly recommend you do, no matter when you are or where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, go check out Steve. Right below in the show notes, you'll see DukeBizAdvisors.com. And Steve will be happy to have a chat with you, or you get his book that's coming out very soon. So, Steve, thank you so much for being on the show today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, Doug. Appreciate it.
All right. That concludes our show for today for the Author Brand Show. Hope you enjoyed it. I sure did. Be sure you check out the show notes below. There's some good stuff there. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment. Give us some love. We'll give it right back. Thanks so much. Have a great day.